Hello friends, welcome to our channel Cbse English, the Topper's Choice. In today's video, we are going to discuss class 12th first lesson from the book Flamingo The Last Lesson. At the beginning, we'll talk about the author of this lesson. Alphonse Daudet is the author of this lesson. Alphonse Daudet was born on 13th May 1840 and died on 16th December 1897. He was a French novelist and short story writer, now remembered chiefly as the author of sentimental tales of provincial life in the south of France. Alphonse Daudet is considered to be one of the most iconic names of French literature. Unlike many famous writers in the world of history, Alphonse wasn't very well educated and wrote his first novel at the age of 14. Many of Alphonse's works drew inspiration from instances of his life. Theme of this lesson: patriotism, freedom of language, and the love for one's mother tongue. These are the predominant themes in the story The Last Lesson. The people of Alsace and Lorraine were denied the freedom to learn their own language by the Prussians. The Last Lesson stresses on the importance of education and the necessity to respect and learn one's own language. This story draws our attention to the unfair practice of linguistic chauvinism. It refers to an unreasonable pride in one's own language while disregarding all the other languages as inferior. Introduction to this lesson. The Last Lesson is set in the days of the Franco-Prussian War that happened during 1870 to 1871, in which France was defeated by Prussia, led by Bismarck. Prussia then consisted of what now are the nations of Germany, Poland, and parts of Austria. In this story, the French districts of Alsace and Lorraine have passed into Prussian hands. The new Prussian rulers discontinued the teaching of French in the schools of these two districts. The French teachers were asked to leave. The story reflects the effects of this on life at school. Summary of this lesson. Franz started for school very late that morning. He was afraid of being scolded because Mr. Hamel was to question them on participles, and he did not know the first word about them. He thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. The warm, bright day, the chirping birds, and the Prussian soldiers drilling in the open field back of the sawmill were tempting. But he resisted the temptation and hurried off to school. There was a crowd in front of the bulletin board near the town hall. Watcher, the blacksmith, asked Franz not to go so fast. He assured the boy that he would get to his school in plenty of time. Usually, there was a great bustle when the school began, but that day, everything was as quiet as Sunday morning. Through the window, Franz saw his classmates already in their places and Mr. Hamel walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. Franz opened the door and went in. He blushed and was frightened. Mr. Hamel very kindly asked him to go to his place. Franz noticed that their teacher had put on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap, all embroidered. He wore these only on inspection and prize days. The village people were sitting quietly on the usually empty back benches. Everybody looked sad, and Hauser had brought an old primer. Mr. Hamel said that it was the last lesson he would give them. Henceforth, only German was to be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master would come the next day. This was their last lesson of French. He wanted them to be very attentive. Franz felt sorry that he had not learnt his lessons properly. The idea that Mr. Hamel was going away made the narrator forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. Now Franz understood why Mr. Hamel had put on his fine Sunday clothes and why the old men of the village were sitting there. They had come to thank the master for his 40 years faithful service and to show their respect for the country that was theirs no more. Mr. Hamel asked Franz to recite, but he stood there silent. The teacher did not scold him. He confessed that his parents and he, means the teacher, were at fault. Then he talked of the French language, the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest, the most logical. He asked them to guard it among them and never forget it. Their language was the key to their prison. Then they had lesson in grammar and writing. The pigeons cooed very low on the roof. Franz thought if they would make even the pigeons sing in German. All the while, Mr. Hamel was sitting motionless in his chair and gazing at one thing or the other. His sister was packing their trunks in the room above as they had to leave the country next day. After writing, they had a lesson in history, and then the baby chanted their ba, be, bi, bo, boo. Even old Hauser was crying. All at once, the church clock struck 12, and then the midday prayers. At the same moment, the trumpets of the Prussians, returning from drill, sounded under the windows. Mr. Hamel stood up. He wanted to speak, but something choked him. Then he took a piece of chalk and wrote on the blackboard as large as he could, Vive la France. It means, long live France. After this, he stopped and leaned his head against the wall. Without a word, he made a gesture with his hand to indicate that the school was dismissed and they might go. Now we'll discuss the main characters of the story. Number 1, Franz. Franz is the story's protagonist and narrator, a young student at a school in Alsace which Germany annexed from France during the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. Franz often skips school and doesn't prepare for lessons. One day, he arrives at school to learn that the French language will no longer be taught in school after an order sent down from Berlin to the occupying Prussian forces. Franz regrets that he didn't pay better attention to his lessons when he had the chance. Number 2, Mr. Hamel. Mr. Hamel is Franz's teacher and schoolmaster who the Prussians order to cease teaching French and live for the country. While Hamel usually intimidates his students with an iron ruler that he slaps on their desks, Hamel is gentle, somber, and reflective as he conducts his last day of French lessons. At the end of the day, he writes "Vive la France" on the chalkboard before sending the students away. Number 3. Hauser. Hauser is an older gentleman Franz recognizes from the village. Franz is surprised to see Hauser sitting on the benches in the back of the schoolroom alongside several other adults from the village. By the end of the story, Hauser is in tears as he reads from a rudimentary language textbook and speaks simple syllables and letters aloud with the youngest students. Number 4. Watcher. Watcher is the village blacksmith. He teases Franz for hurrying so fast to school as Watcher has read the town hall bulletin and knows Franz will have an unconventional day at school. Now we'll discuss the main points of this story. Franz was afraid of going to school as he had not learnt participles. He wanted to enjoy beauty of nature, the bright sunshine, the birds chirruping in the woods, Prussian soldiers drilling, but resisted. He saw all bad news on the bulletin board about lost battles, the drafts, and orders of the commanding officers, etc. He wondered what it could be now. He noticed following changes in the school. Instead of noisy classrooms, everything was as quiet as Sunday morning. The teacher did not scold him and told him very kindly to go to his seat. The teacher was dressed in his Sunday best, beautiful green coat, frilled shirt, and black embroidered cap, which he wore on functions and prize ceremonies only. Villagers were occupying the last benches to pay tribute to Mr. Hamel for his 40 years of sincere service and also to express their solidarity with France. Old Hauser, former mayor, and postmaster were also there. Mr. Hamel announced the notice, which was served from Berlin as, "From tomorrow onwards, German would be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine." Franz realized that what was put up on the bulletin board. Franz could not believe that it would be his last lesson of French. He repented that he did not know his mother tongue and did not take his lessons seriously. Franz realized that he did not know his own mother tongue. He also realized the reason why teacher was dressed in his Sunday best and villagers sitting at the back. Mr. Hamel realized that all three, the children, the parents, and he himself, are to be blamed for losing respect and regard for the mother tongue. He said, "Always keep the mother tongue close to your heart, as it is the key to the prison of slavery." The atmosphere in the class. The teacher, Mr. Hamel, was teaching sincerely and patiently. Students and others were studying with utmost sincerity. Franz wondered sarcastically if Prussians could force pigeons to coo in German. As the church clock struck 12, Mr. Hamel overcame with emotions, could not speak, and wrote on the blackboard, "Vive la France," that is, "Long live France," and dismissed the class. So dear friends, if you have liked this video, please click on like, subscribe the channel and click on the bell icon to get more videos like this. Thank you very much for watching.